what is the standard for calling in the National Guard in this country? President Trump has threatened to send the Guard to cities like Chicago and Baltimore, even though the mayors there, Democratic leaders and governors, they're saying we don't need the Guard. Well, now the president has set his sights on Portland with the same ultimatum, calling the city war-ravaged. In particular, he's pointing to ongoing protests at an immigration and customs enforcement facility. This is what one of those protests looked like this past Friday. A handful of people gathered overnight, some in helmets. This is what the scene looked like a couple days later after President Trump said he wanted to send troops into the city. Things seem to have grown. So, question is the National Guard preventing a problem there at that ICE facility or inflaming a problem there at that ICE facility? Here to talk about the situation is Portland's City Council President, Elana Pirtle-Guiney. Elana, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Looming over this conversation, of course, is 2020 and the scenes from Portland that many people who don't live there could remember. Blocks of violence, property destruction. It was an ugly scene at times. Is the situation there now, big picture, where are things now post-2020, and where do you think things are headed with this looming threat of the National Guard?
This is not 2020 in Portland, and frankly, this National Guard deployment is really unnecessary. Our law enforcement have things under control here. As you saw in the pictures that you showed, it's a very small crowd who has been gathering to show their frustration with President Trump's ICE enforcement. And our local law enforcement has been operating just fine in our city.
And so, Elana, what do you think the impact will be if the National Guard does, in fact, arrive there? 200 troops were ordered by Thursday. Do you expect more protesters to come out and possibly then you have a little bit more potential confrontation?
Portland has a long history of folks expressing their frustrations, their support, their opinions of policy through peaceful marches. And that has continued over the last few months with tens of thousands of people coming out to voice their opinion over all sorts of policies peacefully. Our law enforcement has had that under control. There really is no need for additional federal enforcement in our city.
Elana, what I've always never understood, and maybe because I'm not a politician, is it seems like both sides in this conversation could help one another, right? President Trump says, I'm sending the Guard. I don't want it to get out of control. He says it's already out of control in some places. Your folks could say, all right, we don't really need it, but we'll put them to good use and we'll make sure things stay cool. Well, it should be that simple, no?
Well, certainly, we've talked about the things that Portland would love to receive help in from the president. And Portland, like every major city in the United States, isn't perfect. We would love to have federal infrastructure dollars to finish a major freeway project that would cap a freeway that runs through the heart of my district. We would love to have federal support building affordable housing in our communities. The National Guard in Oregon, and these are Oregonians that we're talking about, are used to being deployed to support their communities when we have major fires in our state. But this type of law enforcement action is certainly not what Portland is asking for.
So, Elana, you're saying that things are under control in Portland. Local law enforcement has everything taken care of. The president's not the only person that's voiced concern. I read that your Republican minority leader in the State House also used similar language, saying that domestic terrorists, it's a quote, are assaulting federal law enforcement and destroying property. Where are those claims coming from? Or why do you think those? Yeah, please.
What I can tell you is that our governor, our attorney general, our mayor, every single member of our city council, and most of the state legislators who actually live in and represent Portland are on the same page here. We have all stood united over the past few days to say to the president, this is not necessary. We have this under control, and there are better ways to use federal resources to support our state.
Elana, this kind of loose collection of protesters called Antifa, that name has been designated a domestic terror group by the administration. There are groups that are public in Portland claiming that mantle and militant opposition to fascism as they see it. Is that not a worry, a public safety worry in your city? The risk of, well, when you have the government saying you've got domestic terrorists there and you've got groups saying, yeah, we're Antifa, is that not a worry?
I think you have groups who protest in different ways across the country. And what we've seen in Oregon is that tens of thousands of people can turn out and march peacefully through our streets, and we don't have any problems. What we've seen in Portland is that our local law enforcement are very good at responding to any problems of any sort that do arise for law enforcement. We haven't seen situations that are out of control like the president has described. And what I'll tell you is that on the ground here, people are actually pretty confused and don't see what the president is talking about.
All right, Elana, Pirtle-Guiney, thank you so much. The city and the state have sued to try to stop this deployment, so we will continue to follow this.